I want to begin. Shulam Aleichem, everybody. Today's daf is daf Zayin. We start the second perik in Horayos. I just want to take 30 seconds because last night we had to rush through the last couple of lines of the first perik. We had a machlokes Rabbi Yoel, Rabbi Yosef, B'das Reb Shimon, whether a chatas shutfin shemesu ba'aleh, whether you could still bring it or you have to let it die. Yeah, machlokes Abaye and Rav Yosef. And Abaye says, B'das Reb Shimon, that you could still bring it. The Gemara bleibs like that, B'das Reb Shimon, and that's the end. We're not going to get into the details of that, but that was the end. Okay. Today's daf begins a new perik. It's called Kohen Mashiach. It doesn't mean that the Kohen is Mashiach. Yeah, Mashiach. I had a dream once. My two sons, Yosef Chaim and Mordechai Shalom. I don't know why I had this dream that their Rosh Hashanah is Mashiach. Mordechai Shalom and Yosef Chaim. Mashiach. I don't know what that means even. But this Kohen Mashiach doesn't mean that he's Mashiach. It means that he was anointed with the Shem and HaMishcha. That's what it means. And the Mishnah, Daf Yud Aleph Amud Beis later in Horayos says...
Kohen Mashiach Milchama?
No. It means the Kohen Gadol that was Meshuach b'Shem and HaMishcha. The Mishnah later in Horayos, Daf Yud Aleph Amud Beis says that was only B'Bayis Rishon, according to most Rishonim. B'Bayis Rishon, they had the Shem and HaMishcha. And Bayis Sheni was Meruba Begodim. They were Neschanech through wearing the Shmeina Begodim. They didn't have the Shem and HaMishcha. So this whole Pedic, the ganze Sug you're about to learn, is only B'Bayis Rishon when they had the Shem and HaMishcha. Yes. They have it now. You know, Vendel Jones, a whole story. He found it in the Qumran. 30 years he searched in one of the caves. He found the Shem and HaMishcha, Shem and Farsamon. It was still there, and it's in the Israel Museum. Yeah, betach. It's not clear whether they used that Shem as Shem and HaMishcha, but the point is the Kohen. The Kohen was Meshuach b'Shem and HaMishcha. Now, what's really interesting is if you take a look. Rabbi Chavi is there. If you take a look on the Torah in Parshas Vayikra, which is kedai to learn anyway because we're learning Zvachim in a week, starting Kachim, it's kedai to go through Parshas Vayikra. In Parshas Vayikra, you have the Parsha of Oila and Shlomim. In the end, you have Chatos. Now, there are 4 subcategories in Chatos. You have a Chatos of Kohen Mashiach. You have a Chatos of Padel and Davish al Tzibur, that we learned in the first parak. You have a Chatos of a Nasi. Then you have a Chatos of a Yachid, a regular Jew.
Again, one more
there are
time.
4 Chatos.
One more time.
Mashiach, Kohen Mashiach.
Right.
A Padel and Davish al Tzibur, when the Tzibur does an Aveda. You have a Nasi and you have a Hedyot.
Right.
What's really interesting is, when the Torah talks about Chatois, it's in that order. The Kohen Mashiach, the Nasi, and the Kohen Mashiach, the Tzibur, the Nasi, and the Hedyot. Right? The Kohen Mashiach is first. For some reason, in Torah Shabbat Peh, maybe Reb Shol, Doctor, you say a vart on this. When it comes to Mishnayos, Rebbe, when he was Masad the Mishnayos, he put it Shaloi Kiderech HaTorah. The Torah begins with Kohen Mashiach, then goes to Parelam Davar Shel Tzibur, then a Nasi, and then a Hedyot. In our Gemara and Mishnayos, first we start with Parelam Davar Shel Tzibur, that's the first parak, and then we start with Kohen Mashiach, and so on and so forth. Why in Torah Shabbat Peh is switched around, starting with Tzibur first, and then Kohen Mashiach, but in the Torah and Parshas Vayikra, it starts first with Mashiach, and then Tzibur. Okay, that's a Shaila.
Why is the Hedyot at the end? Why is the Hedyot at the end?
Okay, another question. Okay, so
I have
now...
lots of questions.
Yes. Okay. So now we start with a new Mishnah. Zug the Heilige Mishnah. Hoire Kohen Mashiach la'atzmai shoygig. The Kohen Mashiach, don't forget, the Kohen Mashiach is the Kohen Gadol.
Yeah.
He was anointed with the Shem and HaMishcha. Now the Kohen Gadol was not just the person that went into the Kodesh HaKadoshim once a year. He was the person that paskin Shilas. Yoru mishpatecha lo Yaakov v'sirascha lo Yisrael, Moshe Rabbeinu says in V'zos HaBracha. He was the Gadol Hadar. He paskin, right? The Basa la Kohen or la Shofet b'yom mehem. You come to the Kohen with a Shaila. Right? So the Kohen HaGadol Me'achav, he was the one who was able to paskin Shilas. So this Kohen Gadol arrived at the wrong conclusion. He said, Chelev mutar. So he paskined la'atzmai shoygig. He came to the wrong conclusion b'shoygig. V'asa shoygig. And he followed through and he did it b'shoygig. He ate the chelev b'shoygig. Then mevi par, unlike a hedyot, right? A regular person who makes a mistake brings a kispa or a se'ira, brings a sheep. The Kohen Mashiach, like the tzibur brings a par, a bull. Okay? So that is the first halach in the Mishnah. Maybe par. Because chashuv. He's held to a higher standard. Yes. Shoygig va'asa mezid. What happens if he paskins b'shoygig and then he knows the mistake in his psak and he does it anyway? Amazed. So the psak was b'shoygig. He arrived b'shoygig to the wrong conclusion, but then he did it b'mezid. What about mezid? If he paskin b'mezid, shaloi kahalacha va'asa shoygig. But by the time he came to do it, he made a shoygig. He forgot about his psak, but he thought it was mutter. Then he's potter. So either way, if there's a mezid by either one of the two steps, he's potter. Why? He has to be a shoygig in the psak and a shoygig in the follow through. Because he's similar to a tzibur, and just like by a par helam davar shel tzibur, the bezin has to paskin b'shoygig wrongly, and the has to follow through b'shoygig. So to the kohen Mashiach la'atzmai, he has to paskin la'atzmai b'shoygig, and he has to follow through b'shoygig as well, because he's compared to the tzibur, and we'll see why in a moment. Says the Gemara, shoygig was a shoygig maybe par. If he paskins b'shoygig and he follows through and he eats the chaylev b'shoygig, he brings a par pshita that's mefurish in the pasuk. I don't need a mishnah for that. Open the chumash and you'll learn the parsha of Kohen Mashiach and you'll see it inside, black and white. Amar Abaye says the mishnah is teaching me an additional chiddush. Hachab my skin on here we're talking about kangan shahoira v'shachach me'ezeh tam hoira. Ubishoshato Omar Areni Yoisal Das Horayos the Ma'adet Temikim Del Misyadalei Shem Hadebe Kameza Dome V'Lachayev Kamash Malan. I'll explain it outside. The Gemara says that when he paskined, he was a shaygig, right? He learned in yeshiva many years ago, and he arrived to the immature, wrong conclusion that chaylev is mutter. 20 years passes, and now he comes across a geshmaka piece of chaylev, and he says, "I remember back in yeshiva 20 years ago." That I had a psak halacha that's mutter. So now he eats it based on that psak halacha of 20 years ago. Says the Gemara, perhaps he doesn't bring a chatas, a par. You know why? He should have thought it through again. Now you're 20 years older. Yeah? Do you have any minhagim that you do from 20 years ago that if you would think it through again, you might not do it?
Probably.
Yeah? You have an example? A whole
several,
list.
Several books full.
יש לך מנהג שאתה כבר עושה ל-20 שנה, ואם אתה חושב רק דקה, אתה אומר לעצמך, למה אני עושה את זה? Yeah? This is what the Gemara is saying. Bad habits. In other words, he arrived to a conclusion when he was immature. He started doing it, and now he's doing it based on what he did 20 years ago, but he's not thinking it through. So the Gemara says, that's kodev lamezid. אם אתה עושה את זה עכשיו, בלי לחשוב, without thinking, why am I doing this? Because I arrived to this conclusion 20 years ago. פשטייס, אתה מבין? זה כבר amazing. Comes the Mishnah teaches that's also a shaygig. Kamash malon, you'd still bring a par. Because there's legitimate reason to assume, perhaps it's amazing. All you got to do is think it through again. You don't even remember why you're doing it. You have minhagim, you don't even remember why you're doing it. You have any habits that you're doing today, thinking that it's rooted in logic, but if you would think it through, you would say, what am I doing?
Don't remember. That should be an everyday thought.
Hey, what am I doing? Why am I doing it? Yeah? Okay. So that's the Gemara says.
OCD.
Most people say vidoy after shmanas.
As it says in Horayos, y'all.
Ah, most people say vidoy after Shemana Esrei.
It says in video, y'all.
And why? Because for this reason?
Because everybody's
Everybody's got something. Mishigasim they're called.
Right.
It says in Horayos, v'lanat ha'holech, you know.
La'anat ha'ilech. Like always think, reassess. Yeah. This Kohen, arrived at the wrong psak. Vidoy. Arrived at the wrong psak 20 years ago. Says chaylev is mutter. Now he's eating chaylev based on a psak 20 years ago. You got to reassess.
One by one.
I try.
You'll be terrified. You'll be terrified.
I got nothing else to do other than accept.
Zog the Gemara weiter. Mezid va'asa shaygig. Yeah, what if he paskins b'mezid Very interesting. Why would a Kohen Mashiach, the Gadol Adar, paskin b'mezid the chayil of his mutter? How's it even possible?
Taiva.
Is that even called a psak? That's just called a violation. Is this a psak?
הוא עושה
יש
שקלא
לזה
בדבר.
חלות פסק?
הוא עושה שקלא, תשמע, בן אדם שיש לו נגוע בדבר, אני יכול זה.
אתה שומע?
אני אגיד לך מה שהיה אתמול בלילה.
Wow. נו, okay, go ahead. Speak in English, everybody can hear.
אני ויונתן, we ate meat at around 3 o'clock. something.
Okay, 3 o'clock meet.
What? Today or yesterday?
Yesterday.
Yesterday.
We ate 3 o'clock meat like this, me and Jonathan. Came and I came back at 9:40, yeah? 9:40 I came home.
Okay.
אז me and him, we wanted something חלבי. אז התחלנו, רק רגע, לא עבר 6 שעות, אבל מה, אנחנו כבר בשעה השישית, ואנחנו ברוב השעה השישית, אבל יונתן אומר לי, אבל לא עבר 6 שעות, אבל אנחנו בתור השעה השישית, אז אתה נגוע בדבר, אתה בא משגע.
זה amazing! He started rationalizing that maybe not. After Chveis into the 5th hours was really later.
6 hours.
Eastern time, Pacific time, Israel time. Verstehst? They wanted to mix us kekula. There you go, another one. Verstehst? Yafeh.
אני אומר לך, ככה אתמול.
Yafeh. This is how it goes. We start rationalizing. Says the Mishnah, that's amazing. That's amazing. Amazing means either you didn't want to be ma'ayin carefully because you knew if you actually open the Shulchan Aruch, you might find out what you don't want to know. So, or like Reb Shaul is saying, "Guys, you have a taiva, you want to eat. What do you have for chalavi? You had the good chocolate. You wanted to eat."
Yeah, 6 months.
Rationalization. Yeah. The doctor meets these kinds of people all day. So the Gemara says, "Mezid v'asa shaygig."
ועוד אומר לי, רק רגע, אבא, השוקולד, זה אבקת חלב, אבקת חלב זה לא חלב.
Verstehst?
אתה
Gewalt.
יודע כמה אבא מיניים.
This is beautiful. Beautiful. Okay. So the Gemara says, the Kohen Mashiach, when he paskin the Shaila, was amazed. He didn't want to be like rationalized. Chaylev is mutar. And then
Talking about the Gadol Ador.
the Gadol
That
Ador
was
never probably happened. Probably never happened.
No, but I'm just.
It's halacha. It never happened probably.
I understand.
Yeah. Okay,
No,
just
that's not the issue.
I'll leave
The
it there.
issue is- The issue is right. Is that
Okay.
okay? Yeah. all right.
Yeah. So where the immediately? How do I know if it's a mazid? He paskins b'mazid wrongly, and then he does it b'shoigig. Yeah, he forgets. He does b'shoigig. So here you don't bring a chatos. By the way, the kohen gadol, if he makes a mistake without paskining the mistake first, he doesn't bring a chatos. He only brings a chatos if he paskins by mistake a wrong psak and then he follows through on it. Okay? That's the only time he brings a par. So if he's amazing in one of those steps, or Imamish makes a shogi without paskining first, he doesn't bring
In other words, he gives a psak.
a wrong psak b'shogi. He says
but-
chaylo is mutter
yeah,
b'shogi.
Right, but the psak creates some mitzias.
Yeah, and he
That
follows
happens
through.
To be, right, but that happens to be. It's not beseder.
Yes, and Manon and Milia.
Kippur, he brings a par for his own.
That's for Tumas Mikdash Vekadashav. That's only for Tumas Mikdash Vekadashav. Yes.
Yeah, because he first brings for himself and his family.
Yes, but all of that is only, that's the first daf and Shavuos we learned together, is only for Tumas Soyer, Panimi, and the power of the Kohen Gadol, I think. We have to look at the Mishnah again. The end of the Mishnah there, and Beis and Beis. We have to look at it afterwards. Okay, but either way, if he's amazing in the psak and he does it b'shoigig, he brings nothing. He has to be a shoigig in the psak and a shoigig on the follow through to bring a par, just like par helam davish al tzibur, where Bezdin is a shoigig on the psak and the tzibur is a shoigig on the follow through. Manon and Mili, how do I know to compare Kohen Mashiach? Last line of Avav Beis. How do I know to compare Kohen Mashiach to tzibur? Mashiach tzibur. It says the words la'ashma sa'am. If you look at the Torah adds 2 words which, by the way, make no sense. Kohen Mashiach does a mistake. La'ashma sa'am. What does the have to do with this? La'ashmat am. What does that la'ashma sa'am have to do with it? By the way, pshuta shel mikra, it's a difficult words. Torah inserts Hashem inserts la'ashmas in the parsha of Kohen Mashiach. What does la'ashmas have to do with it? Now, by the way,
Usually the opposite. If someone kills the lady, he has to go. Sorry, he kills Moshe. He goes to Ari Mikla because it's the ashram of the Kohen Gadol.
yeah. Oh, very good. Pesach is saying that if somebody kills b'shoigig, it's because the Kohen Gadol wasn't mispalel. He was guilty in a certain sense. But here we're saying that when the Kohen Gadol does an aveira, it's to the detriment of the Am. What do you mean to the detriment of the Am? Yeah? Meshachachma says, unbelievable, in Parshas Vayikra, this pasuk, he says, what does la'ashmas amin? He says when a Kohen Gadol makes a mistake in his personal life, it's reflective of a mistake he made on Yom Kippur in the Kodesh HaKadoshim when he tried to be mechaper for Klal Yisrael.
Wow.
So when the Kohen Gadol makes a mistake and he eats chaylev, he made a wrong psak, and wherever he makes a mistake, la'ashmat ha'am. It's a siman. It's a siman. There was a mistake in the Kodesh HaKadoshim.
Wow.
It was to the detriment of the am. One of the pshatim, many pshatim here. Yeah. It was like a sign, a hint. Then it must have done something wrong.
Wow.
But either way,
Okay,
here we have.
That's
That's
a
a remez.
If that doesn't give the Kohen Gadol a pachad,
Yeah, you have other.
Right.
He's the God Ladar. So the Gemara says, okay, so halachically, what does La'asham Sa'ah mean? Hare Mashiach Katzibur. It's teaching you that a Kohen Mashiach is like, his halacha is like Ashma Sa'am. Dahainu, what does Ashma mean? Parallel Am Davar Shal Tzibur. Just like Parallel Am Davar Shal Tzibur, the psak has to be b'shoigig and the act itself has to be b'shoigig, so too the Kohen Mashiach, the psak has to be b'shoigig and the act, the aveda has to be b'shoigig. Asks the Gemara, why do I need a pasuk? V'haloi dinu. Yeah, I could have learned it from a Mametzino. Why? Because Tzibur Mutza Mechlal Yochid. And Mashiach Mutza Mechlal Yochid. Ma Tzibur Ein Chayav Melal Halam Dover. Just like Tzibur was taken out of the klal of a regular Yochid who doesn't Aveira, a regular Yochid who doesn't Aveira brings a sheep for a Chatas. What does a Tzibur bring? A bull. A par. And a Kohen Mashiach was also taken out of the klal in that sense. He doesn't bring a chatas like everybody else. He brings a bull. And not a kispa, not a se'iro. So I would say once you see that these two are unique, they bring a different kind of carbon for a chatas. So now I could say, Ma tzibur ein chayoven elo al halam davar m'shigas ma'isa. Af Mashiach lo yechayiv elo al halam davar m'shigas ma'isa. So now I could see there's a comparison. There's a similarity. Because I see they both bring a par for a chatas. Unlike all the rest of Klal Yisrael who bring a kisber se'ira. So once I see that similarity, I can compare the other ones as well. I could say they only bring a chatas just like a tzibor. They bring a par, they only bring it if the psak was b'shoigig and the follow-through was b'shoigig. So too, a Kohen Mashiach only brings it if the psak was b'shoigig, if he paskened on himself b'shoigig, and then he followed through b'shoigig. Says the Gemara, that's not so pashut. I would still need a pasuk because I can compare it to something else. I can compare a Kohen Mashiach to a Nasi. What's a Nasi? A Nasi is the Melech, right? He was also Mutza Mechlal Yachid. Nasi is different than everybody else who makes a mistake. Why? Because a Nasi brings a Sa'ir, not a Se'ir, not a female, a male goat, a he-goat, right? So just like a Nasi was taken out of the klal and brings his own type of carbon. So a Mashiach Mutza Mechlal Yochid, and a Mashiach also brings a different kind of carbon, a par, unlike everybody else. So then I can maybe compare it to a Nasi. Ma Nasi, maybe b'shigigas ma'isa, beloy helam dover. A Nasi doesn't have to paskin on himself wrongly and then follow through in order to bring his own unique carbon. Even if he just makes a mistake without it being preceded by a wrong psak, he also brings his own unique carbon. So therefore I would say, also Mashiach, maybe b'shigas ma'isa b'lo yelam davar. So Kohen Mashiach also brings, without the psak prior to the ma'isa, only a ma'isa alone, b'shoigi. Let's say, Chves, he wanted to grab Shuman, and he grabbed Chelev, or he forgot Chelev was Aser. Whatever the shigigas ma'isa is, just the act itself was done b'shoigi without having a psak prior to that b'shoigig. So maybe it's similar to a nasi. So here we have two options. We have the Kohen Mashiach in the middle, you can go and compare it to a parallel davar shel tzibur, or you can compare it to a nasi. Which one do you compare it to? The nafkamina would be: do you need a psak preceding the act or not? That would be the nafkamina. So that's the shaila. Says the Gemara, nirla midaina. So here we take a look. What's Kohen Mashiach more similar to? Is it more similar to tzibur, or is it more similar to nasi? Now that's the Brisa going to handle. So on the one hand, tzibur b'par, the one that's more similar to a tzibur.
אפילו שזה נראה כמזיד ומביא חטס. זה כל הרעיון. שכהן ביחיד.
Yes, by nasi.
נאסי או כהן משיח, זה אותו דבר.
Kohen Mashiach, right, that's the shaila. Azanu danim.
אותו דבר. שהם מביאים בסוף, אפילו על שזה כמעט, או שזה נראה מזיד, הם מביאים חטס. זה החידוש פה, נכון? כי כי בייס דין, רק שעשו, שהורו,
English, I'm already gonna say, yeah.
רק אם הם הורו במזיד,
Yeah.
הם לא מביאים, נכון?
No, only if the psak was b'shoigig and the maisa was b'shoigig. Yes.
So that's a difference.
Yes.
זה מה כאילו הגמרא רוצה להגיד לנו שבכהן משיח ובנאסי זה שונה.
Yeah, nasi only needs the maisa b'shoigig. It doesn't need a psak prior to the maisa. Okay, that's the chiluk, and that's the Gemara's. That's the shaila. Kohen Mashiach, is it similar to a nasi? It does not need a psak b'shoigig, only the maisa. Yes, by nasi. Nasi doesn't matter. No, the chiluk is: do you need a psak preceding the maisa or not? By a tzibur, you need bezin to paskin b'shoigig that chelav is mutter, and then you need a call to follow through. By a nasi, even if nobody paskin that chelav is mutter b'shoigig, if he just thinks on his own that it's mutter without a psak, and he eats the chelav b'shoigig, he's already chay of his own unique carbon, which is a he-goat, a soyer. Now, a kohen Mashiach can be compared to a nasi, or can be compared to a tzibur. Gemara wants to know which one is it more likely to be compared to. Is it more likely to be compared to a tzibur, and therefore it would only be chayev a par if a psak happened before he paskin wrongly b'shoigig and then did the maisa b'shoigig, or even if he didn't paskin b'shoigig prior to the maisa, he just did the maisa b'shoigig, that's enough. That is the shaila here. So the Bryce says near lemidoimo. Let's see, what is it more similar to?
He made the paskin b'shoigig, and then there's a chance that he's going to do the maisa.
Then he does the aveira b'shoigig. No, avadi you have to be b'shoigig all the way through. But the question is, how many b'shoigigs do you need? Do you need a psak b'shoigig and the maisa b'shoigig, or just the maisa b'shoigig without a psak? That's the shaila. Okay, this is it. This is the shaila. A nasi does not need a psak b'shoigig. Tzibur does need a psak b'shoigig before the maisa. So what's a kohen Mashiach compared to? What's it more similar to?
So by a nasi, it's basically a gemir stas. It's not a psak.
Not a psak. It's just
it's a gemir stas.
Yeah, he just thinks that it's whatever, or he thinks it's shuman and he mistakenly grabs chaylev. Yeah. So it was near lemidaima. What's kohen Mashiach more similar to? Is it more similar to tzibur or more similar to nasi? So on the one hand, you could say tzibur b'par. They both bring a par. Yeah? They both bring a bull. And ve'ein mevi'in asham tali. And they also they don't bring an asham tali. But what's an asham tali? When you have a chaticha, let's just say this is a piece, I eat it, then I find out, oh my goodness, this might have been chaylev. Not sure if it's shuman or chaylev. So you're not sure
maybe
if you're
yes
over
and maybe no.
Maybe yes, maybe in a suffix. So what kind of carbon do you bring? Bring an asham tali.
Yeah.
Until it's only a temporizing method. It's not a finale.
It's not.
You wait till you get a sock, and if you find later what you did, then you bring it.
Then you bring a chatas.
So it's not a korban by itself. It's a delay technique. That's why it's called Asham Tolu.
Asham tali because we're still hanging in the yeah. Oh, interesting. Okay, tluyin va'imdin aser semei tshuva. We're still hanging, in the balance. That Okay, so by the way, a tzibur does not bring an asham toli. Okay, so a tzibur doesn't. They bring a par for a chatas, and they don't bring an asham toli. And in that sense, Mashiach is very similar to tzibur. He doesn't bring a regular chatas like everybody else. He brings a par. Ve'enu mevi Asham Tali. He doesn't bring an Asham Tali either. So in that sense, he's more similar to tzibur. Yeah. So mat tzibur ein chayev elam dav m'shigas ma'isa. Af Mashiach lechayev elam dav m'shigas ma'isa. So if he's similar in terms of par, he's similar in terms of he doesn't bring an Asham Tali. So perhaps he's also similar that he needs the psak to be a shaygig plus the ma'isa to be a shaygig. But on the other hand, see, the Bryce is trying to figure out what's the Kohen Mashiach more similar to. So or maybe you go to the other way, which is more similar to a Nasi. How so? Because Nasi maybe se'ira b'avodas kichavim. When a Nasi, a Melech, serves by mistake avodah zara, he brings a se'ira, right? A she-goat, which is unique. Maybe Asham Vadai and brings an Asham Vadai. Right? What's Asham Vadai? When do you bring an Asham Vadai? When you're Moil Behektish, Asham Elois, or Asham Gzelos, if you steal. Right? So Asham is a very unique carbon. Asham Shivcha Charufa. So Asham Vadai, a Nasi does bring an Asham Vadai. Mashiach, and a Kohen Mashiach, in that sense, is similar to a Nasi. He brings maybe Se'ira, Ba'avodas Kechavim, maybe Asham Vadai. So perhaps, maybe we go to the other way. Man Nasi, maybe B'shigas Maisa. Af Mashiach, maybe B'shigas Maisa. So you have, this Kohen Mashiach is somewhere in between the fork in the road. Right? On the one hand, it's more similar to Tzibur, in the sense that it brings a par, and it doesn't bring an Asham Tali. On the other hand, it's more similar to a Nasi, that it brings a Se'ira B'avodas Kechavim, and an Asham Vadai. So now the question is, whoa, similar in two ways here, similar 2 ways there. So how should we compare the halacha of a shaygig? Does it need a psak preceding the maisa or not? If you compare it to tzibur, it does. If you compare it to nasi, it doesn't. So which way do we go?
So again, by Kohen Gadol, he's high even if there's no psak. Is that what you're saying?
No, that's the shaila.
Right.
If you compare it to a tzibur, you need a psak before.
Right.
If you compare it to a nasi, you don't.
You don't need a psak.
So which one is it? It's an equal. It's
Go the other way.
huh?
Go the other way.
Go the other way. Talmud Loimar says the pasuk la'ashma sa'am. That's why I need the pasuk to clarify this halacha.
Mm-hmm.
If you leave it up to svara, it would be a 50-50. I
Yeah.
wouldn't know on my own.
So therefore,
So
what?
therefore, Hareu Mashiach katzibur. Mashiach is like a tzibur. Ma tzibur ena mevi el alam davar shegas ma'isa. Af Mashiach ena mevi el alam davar shegas ma'isa. You compare it to a tzibur, and you need the psak first, the psak b'shaygig, and then followed by the ma'isa b'shaygig. Asks the Gemara, Eima matzibur hoiru v'asu achra b'asu chayovin. Af Mashiach k'shahoiru v'asu achra b'asu chayev. Oh, once you compare it to a tzibur, compare it all the way. Go all the way. Don't go halfway. Compare it all the way. What does it mean compare it all the way? Compare it in the sense that just like by a tzibur, Bezdin paskins and everybody follows. So too by a kohen, if he paskins and people follow, he should also bring a par. The Mishnah says only if he paskins and he himself does it. So once you compare it to a tzibur, go all the way. Say if other people follow the kohen, he also brings a par. Says the Gemara Talmud Loimar, no, for that far we don't go. You know why? Because it says, "V'hikriv al chatosoi asher chata." The Torah is very mefurish. The power that the Kohen Mashiach brings is only if he does it, not other people follow. So you can't compare it in that sense. Al mashechato hu mevi ve'ein mevi al mashechato acherim. The Kohen Mashiach will not be compared to a tzibur in the sense of other follows, because you have a pasuk saying not like that. Amar Mar says the Gemara Mashiach v'par ve'ein mevi asham tolui. In the Brisa we learned that the Mashiach, the Kohen Mashiach, brings a par and a shaygig. That's mefurish in the pasuk, mefurish in the Torah, but he doesn't bring an asham tolui. In that sense, he's compared to a tzibur. Does not bring an asham tolui. So the Gemara just wants to stop at that point in the Brisa. Hold, menole de'im mevi asham tolui. How do I know that a Kohen Mashiach, if he eats a piece, afterwards he finds out it might have been chaylev, he doesn't bring an asham tolui? How do I know that? Where does it say that in the Torah? Says the Gemara, the chsiv. How do I know Kohen Mashiach does not bring Nashim Toli? The Chsiv, v'chiper ol v'kohen al shigigosoi asher shogag. Oh, mi shechatosei v'shigigosoi shove, yotze Mashiach she'engig shigigosoi v'chatosei shove, the Chsiv l'ashmasa marei Mashiach katzibur. It's only for those who bring a chatos on a shigigas maisa without a psak prior. Just the shogig on the maisa. Those are the people who bring an Asham Toli. That's the drasha. But if someone is required to bring a chatas only if it was preceded by a wrong psak, and then followed by a shogig of a maisa, they're not subject to the parsha of Asham Toli, and that's how I know that a Kohen Mashiach does not bring an Asham Toli. Now, how do I know that a Kohen Mashiach doesn't bring a para chatas if it's just shigigas maisa? He also needs a psak b'shoigig before that, because it says la'ash masa'am, right? We're compared to a tzibur. Gemara says, what do you mean? La'ash masa'am at kan leka'amer le. At that point, at that stage of the brisa, we don't know of the pasuk yet. The pasuk comes only afterwards as a deciding factor who to compare it to. But at that stage of the brisa, we haven't introduced the pasuk yet. So how can you teach me about Asham Toli? If Asham Toli, if he doesn't make an Asham Toli, is only a result of La'ash Masa'am, we haven't introduced La'ash Masa'am at that stage of the brisa yet. So you can't use this as a source or as the foundation that he doesn't bring an Asham Toli. Ela Asham Kadi Naspa, says the Gemara, erase Asham Toli, that's really not the Iker Taina. At that point, we cannot know Asham Toli yet, because you only know Asham Toli, that he doesn't bring an Asham Toli, after you know the pasuk of La'ash Masa'am.
If there's already a pasuk in the Torah that's already mefurash,
Okay?
so why need all this shakle v'tareh?
Right.
This pasuk mefurash.
Right. It's a great question. Great question. Rav Shaul is asking, it's a first pasuk. Why are we going through a whole back and forth? You compare it to a nasi, compare it to a tzibur. Yesh lana pasuk mefurash. The reason why we do that is because the Gemara wants to know, why do we need the pasuk? Gemara is working through logic. Gemara says, maybe we don't need the pasuk. Yeah? It's amazing what you're bringing up, because the Gemara is saying is, if we need a pasuk, you wouldn't know it on your own. Because if you would know it on your own, I wouldn't need the pasuk. So the Gemara wants to get to a point. The Gemara is working through the logic.
What, the Gemara wants to prove the pasuk?
Yeah, Gemara wants to prove the necessity of the pasuk. We wouldn't know it on our own.
But that doesn't mean that the whole puzzle was just for that.
I got it now.
It was just
Yeah.
part of it.
What?
Who said the whole puzzle was just for this drush? Maybe you had this puzzle anyway.
No,
Because you need it for other reasons. Lash masam
No, I'm just saying. No, I'm saying every word in the Torah
is necessity.
Ash Masa'am maybe is for this drush, but we still have the puzzle. It's not like even if we would learn it from one or the other, we would be able to learn it out. We would know from which one to go. If the Nasi or Tzibur, we still need the puzzle.
But if I don't need a halacha, I'm not learning a halacha from it, why would I need it?
The only other words are Ash Masa'am, what about the rest of it?
Yeah, lash masam, those words.
What about the rest of the puzzle? We still need.
Yeah, we still need. Yeah, Gemara is downing those two words. It's amazing. There's not an extra kutzah shel yud. So if you have two words in the title, the Gemara is saying, if I could learn it from a logic to compare it misvara, why need the pasuk? The Gemara is working through the whole brisa that I wouldn't know it misvara because I can compare it to nasi, compare it to tzibur, so therefore I need la'ash masam. Yeah.
כל המצוות שלנו זה כתובות בתורה, אז כל המצוות האלה הם פסוקים מהתורה, כל המצוות. תותפות.
Right, it's true. The assumption of this brisa is whatever's in the Torah is necessity. You wouldn't know it on your own. By the way, okay, it's not so pashut. You're right. The Maral says that we were given 4 mitzvahs before Matan Torah. Which 4 mitzvahs were given before Matan Torah? No, in Mora. Specifically in Mora. In Mora, we were given 4 mitzvahs. Kibbut Ava'im, Para Aduma, Dinim, and Shabbos. So, the Maharal says something amazing. Why were we given only those 4 mitzvahs? He says that those 4 mitzvahs represent 4 types of mitzvahs, 4 categories in mitzvahs. Paraduma, they're mitzvahs that you don't understand. It's chayk. Yeah, you would never understand it on your own. That's one headline. Paraduma, the Hashem says, what you're about to receive has 4 categories. One is paraduma. One is kibbut aveim. Kibbut aveim is logic. It's instinct. Your parents. Yeah, even if Hashem wouldn't tell it to you, you want to honor your parents, right? You love your parents, you respect your parents. Unless they traumatize you, but that's an exception.
Right.
But a kapana kibbut aveim is another category.
If someone's a normal
Then we
person,
have-
that's
Then we have dinim. Yeah.
Mishpat.
Dinah Luchas and Dinah.
The 3 categories of mitzvahs is choik, mishpat, and edus.
And mitzvah.
So-
Yeah.
so society cannot-
Dinim and Shabbos. So Shabbos is only once the Torah tells you that's when it makes sense. It doesn't make sense in your own, but once the Torah says it, Kisheishis Yomim Osa Hashem Asa Shemayim V'Asa Aretz Uvayoyim Hashvi Sofas V'Nafesh. So Al Kain Beirich Hashem. So that's why you have to keep it. So one mitzvah makes no sense at all. Even if the Torah says it, you won't know.
It makes sense to work 7 days a week.
Only once the Torah gives you the time, now you know.
So the non-Jews got.
No, they were saying exactly. There are 4 types of mitzvahs. Dina, paraduma, you don't know at all. Even if the Torah gives it to you. It's a chayk. It's called a chayk. Then you have kibbut avim, which is emotionally intuitive. You have logic. It's emotion. You're emotionally inclined to do it. Yeah? Then you have dinim, which you're logically inclined to do it. You're not emotionally inclined to do it. Okay? And then you have Shabbos, which you're only inclined to do it once the Torah gives you the reason.
It's called ages.
Why? If you work 6 days
So
a
it
week,
makes sense after the Torah tells you how to do
That's not why you do it, though.
It makes sense after the Torah tells you what to
So
do.
where rest everything, yeah, only makes sense after Torah. But upon him, either way, we're getting sidetracked. But the point is, this Bryce assumes that la'ashma sa'am wouldn't be there unless you actually need it. So the Bryce is coming to tell you, going through all the logic you can come up with and showing you, you still wouldn't come to it on your own unless the Torah teaches it to you. Okay, says the Mishnah. Okay, next Mishnah. Hoyde b'fnei atzmai v'osa b'fnei atzmai. Wow, this is a very interesting Mishnah. Let's say the Kohen Mashiach arrived to this new Mishnah. Hoyde b'fnei atzmai
Okay, good.
v'osa b'fnei atzmai. What?
why does it come out of the Kohen Mashiach?
Because he is anointed with the Shem and HaMishcha. Mashiach is Shem. Hoyde b'fnei atzmai. If he paskind on his own, v'osa b'fnei atzmai miskapel b'fnei atzmai, to bring his own carbon. Hoyde im atzibur. Let's say somehow Bezdin was Matir Chaylev and the Kohen Mashiach also was Matir Chaylev. Happens to be at the same time. V'asam atzibur. And they violated Chaylev, the same Isur, together, but they arrived at the same psak together also. They each had a different psak. The Kohen Mashiach arrived at his psak on his own, and Bezdin arrived at their psak. And he did it together with Bezdin. Miskaper loy im atzibur. So then, he doesn't have to bring his own par. He can be included in the par. Why is it pashut? It's not so pashut because the Kohen had his own psak. It's not like he relied on Bezdin's psak. But because it coincided together with Bezdin's psak and everybody followed Bezdin and they have to bring a par, he can be included in that par. Okay, now the Mishnah is going to explain why could the Kohen Mashiach be counted in Bezdin's par helam davar shel tzibur. Because there's a similarity in halacha in the way the Torah is mechayiv the par on the psak of Bezdin and the way the Torah is mechayiv on the par on the psak of the Kohen Mashiach. There's a similarity there. Why? Because Bezdin is only chayiv if they paskin to be mevatel only a half a mitzvah, not the whole mitzvah that we learned in the previous Mishnah. She'ein Bezdin chayiv not she'yod levatel miktzas ulekayim miktzas. V'cheina Mashiach, the part also, the Kohen Mashiach is also not chayiv, only if he paskins the Mivatla Miktzas mitzvah, not a whole mitzvah. So once you see there's a common thread in when they're chayiv a par and how they're chayiv a par, I'll tell you that the Kohen can use the power of Bezdin to be neskaper. That's the interesting halacha in our Mishnah. And v'loy b'vedes kachavim, also b'vedes zara, same halacha. Bezdin is only chayiv if they misled Am Yisrael in Avodah Zarah, meaning they're only matter half of Avodah Zarah. In other words, it said it's mutter to do one aspect of Avodah Zarah. Actually, Yor Levat L'Miktzah L'Chaim Miktzah, and also Kohen Mashiach is the same way. So therefore, the Kohen Mashiach can cover his own chiyuv with Bezdin's par. Yeah, save himself a lot of money. A bull is expensive. So where says Menani Mili? How do I know this halacha that a Kohen Mashiach could be neskaper, could use the Bezdin's par that they're mechuyev? And the Ton Rabban and Hoyre Matzibur Vasan Matzibur Yochel Yavi Par La'atzmoi. I would have thought he has to bring his own par. V'dinu, right? It might have been even a svara. Nasi Mutza Mechlal Yachid. I don't even need a pasuk for this because Nasi is an exception, right? If a Mashiach Mutza Mechlal Yachid, Mashiach is also an exception. So man Nasi Chatu V'fnei Atzma V'fnei Atzma Chatu Matzibur Miskapel Matzibur, just like a Nasi. If he's Chatu Matzibur, he could use the power of the Tzibur. Af Mashiach Chatu V'fnei Atzma V'fnei Atzma Chatu Matzibur Miskapel Matzibur. You can compare it to Nasi. Because loy. You can't compare him to Nasi. And Mamarta ben Nasi shkem eskapel matzibur b'yom kippurim. By a Nasi has an advantage. There's a pirch on that. Because a Nasi could use the Soyer Hapnimi, right, to be niskaper with the rest of Klal Yisrael. Timer b'Mashiach, but a Kohen Gadol can't use the Soyer Hapnimi. He needs his own par. She'im b'skapel mitzibur v'kapurim, however b'skapel mitzibur v'kapurim, yochel yoy par la'atzmai. Maybe he's also not going to be able to be included in the power of the tzibur, because you see, he can't be included in the Soyer Hapnimi of the tzibur in Yom Kippur. Tamad loymar al chatosoy asher chatam. The only time the Torah was mechayiv a Kohen Gadol to bring his own par is when it's chatosoy asher chata. He is the only one who did the aveira. But if Bezdin paskin for Am Yisrael, they can do the same aveira, and everybody did that same aveira, then he doesn't have to bring his own par. He can be included in the par of the tzibur. Okay, tzad. Chata b'vnei atzmai. Chata matzibur miskapel matzibur. Now the Gemara wants to know exactly how did the Kohen Gadol arrive at the same wrong conclusion as Bezdin and Sanhedrin HaGadol. Hey Chadami, what happened? Slow the case down for me. Ilemaduhu mufla. Then einan muflain. If you're going to tell me the Kohen Gadol, right, was the Gadol Adar. Don't forget, we're talking about not just somebody who wore fancy clothes, the Shemaina Begudim, and went into the Kodesh HaKadoshim and Yom Kippur. We're talking about somebody who was the most educated, the biggest Talmid Chacham in Klal Yisrael. Everybody looked to the Kohen Gadol, not just for Yiras Shamayim, but also for Torah, for Psak Halacha, right? So if, huh?
Only in the first place.
Only if you're saying English, they paid him off. Yeah, it's true. Huh?
Is he greater than the Rosh Sanhedrin?
In many cases, he was. In many cases, he might have been the one who everybody looked to in Bezdin. So the Gemara says, he was the greatest of the Dayanim and Sanhedrin. And they're not so great. Pshita de miskaper loy b'fnei atzmoi. Avadi would have to bring his own par. You know why? Because in such a case, the Sanhedrin wouldn't be mechuyev in a parallel davar shel tzibur. You know why? Because if he paskin on his own without Bezdin, Bezdin has no right to paskin without him. Because Bezdin needs the Gadol Adar to be present at the psak in order for them to be mechuyev a parallel davar shel tzibur. That was a previous Mishnah. So the Gemara says, "Hara delohin v'loy klum." Their hara without the Kohen Gadol present wouldn't be anything, right? In such a case, where Bezdin paskins without the Gadol Adar or the Kohen Gadol present, meaning the Kohen Gadol paskined on his own, and they didn't have him present at their psak, then everybody would have to bring their own chapas. You can't bring a parallel davar shel tzibur in such a case. The ida inon miflon, and if Bezdin are the ones who are greater than the Kohen Gadol, who lav mifla, amay miskapel b'fnei atzmai, then Avadi wouldn't be able to bring his own carbon. Because then he can't paskin. So Monavshach, if he is the greater one, they don't bring. If they're greater than him, then he doesn't bring. So how do you ever have a case where they're both mechuyev, and on that the Mishnah says he can be yoitza with theirs? So we have to come to a conclusion. How is there a case where they're both mechuyev? You know what? They're on the same level. Sanhedrin was on the same level as the Kohen Gadol, so they're both eligible to paskin on their own. Sanhedrin is a body on their own, paskin wrongly chaylev is mutter. The Kohen paskin chaylev is mutter, so they're both muflin, and therefore they both become a chuyiv in a param davar shel tzibur. Okay, now says the Gemara, Sovra Abayla Meimer, Chotu b'fnei atzma v'osim b'fnei atzma eichadami. Okay, what does it mean? He paskined on his own and he was chayt on his own, right? Separately from the klal. The Yasvi b'shnei mekaymes, Bezdin had their own space where they paskin from the Lishkas Agazis, and the Kohen had his own place. V'kamoyru b'trei Yisuri, and they both each paskin on their own Isser. They were both mater chaylev. Amar le Rava, why do you need them to be in a separate place? Otu shnei mekaymes garmin. What does the place have to do with it? Ela afilu yazim b'chad mokem. Even if they sat in the same place, keeping the kamoyru b'trei Yisuri chatav b'fnei atzmayu. As long as they sat, even if they sit in the same vicinity, right? As long as they each arrived to that psak to be mater and isser, then they mechuyev in a par. Mechuyev in a par. The Kohen Mashiach is mechuyev in his own par, and the tzibur is mechuyev in their par. Okay, so Rava argues doesn't have to be in separate places. Okay, that's all. More says pshita hu b'chaylev hen b'avodas kichavim. Oh, what happens? Very interesting. If Bezdin paskins chaylev is mutter, or the Mashiach paskins chaylev is mutter, and Bezdin paskins avodas zara is mutter, says the Gemara, that's for sure. The Kohen Mashiach can't cover himself with the power of the Bezdin. Why not? Because Chote b'fnei atzmahu the chlukim b'tamayu. It's two separate isurim, two separate psukim. Right? So therefore, v'chalukan b'karbonas, they even bring separate karbonas. Because the Kohen Mashiach, on Avodah Zarah, you bring a par and a sar. And on Chaylev, you only bring a par, so it's not going to cover you. It's two separate averas, it's not going to cover you. Right? Du b'par, v'hen b'par v'sar. Right? He brings a par because it's Chaylev, and they bring a par sar because of Avodah Zarah. Kamaisu, Hani sar v'ula maisi. V'cholshken hu b'varis kamen b'chaylev, v'chalukan b'kabin asein l'gamri, du se'ira, v'inu par. And the other way, he brings a se'ira, they bring a par, so it's not even shaykh. Now the Gemara wants to know what happens. Elahu b'chaylev machasas hakerev, v'hen b'chaylev shaladak and ma'u. Here's the shaila. What if they're both mater chaylev, but they're mater different parts of the chaylev, different parts of the animal? Yeah? Now the shaila is, mir min. No, the Torah has different chaylev. Chaylev shal gabe aksolim, chaylev shal gabe adakin. Correct. Oh, that's the shaila. Maybe mir min afagav the kabad and shava, keeping them trei kroi kasi. Yeah, pligim betamayu. I do shem chaylev echadu, like you're saying, right? Shem chaylev echadu. Yeah. Imtem etzlam shem chaylev echadu. Bechaylev hu bechaylev and bedam mao. Mir kim mir betamayu pligin. I do makim the shava kabad bas carbon as lina teku. That's a teku. That's all. So what's this chaylev and what is dam, right? So it's two separate isurim. So maybe you can't cover yourself with their carbon. Chaylev, maybe yes, but chaylev and dam, maybe not. Or maybe it's the same carbon. They both bring a par.
Because it's
Shavim b'karbonon, yeah. So teku tishbi taretz kushis ve'avoyes. Okay, stop over here.
Same discussion on base on the face, the same shot.
Yes.